Have you ever stood at the edge of everything and nothing, where one step forward means the end of all pain? Tonight's story will shake your understanding of divine intervention. When a broken man climbed onto a bridge railing with nothing left to lose, something impossible happened that science still can't explain. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I really want to see how far these powerful stories are reaching across the world. The rain fell like needles against Marcus Thompson's face as he stood on the Jefferson Bridge, his hands gripping the cold metal railing. Below him, the river churned black and violent, matching the storm that had been raging in his soul for months. At 34 years old, he had lost everything that gave his life meaning. His wife, Sarah, had died in a car accident 8 months ago, taking their unborn child with her. The drunk driver who killed him walked free on a technicality, his expensive lawyer finding some procedural error that made the evidence inadmissible. Marcus had sat in that courtroom, watching the man who destroyed his world smile and shake hands with his legal team, and something inside him had shattered beyond repair. The construction company he'd built from nothing had collapsed 2 weeks after the trial. Unable to focus, unable to care, he'd made mistake after mistake until his biggest client pulled out, triggering a cascade of cancellations. His employees, people he considered family, had to be let go one by one. The bank foreclosed on his house last week, the same house where he and Sarah had planned to raise their children. He'd been sleeping in his truck until that too was repossessed yesterday morning. Now he stood here with nothing but the clothes on his back and a pain so deep it felt like drowning while still breathing. Marcus looked down at the water again. It would be quick, he told himself. The fall alone would probably knock him unconscious, and the cold October river would do the rest. No more waking up and remembering Sarah was gone. No more seeing her killer's smug face every time he closed his eyes. No more pretending to friends and family that he was handling things. That time was healing wounds that only seemed to get deeper and more infected with each passing day. His mother had called him earlier, leaving another worried voicemail. He couldn't bring himself to return. She lived across the country now, too far away to see how badly her son was crumbling. Maybe it was better that way. He climbed over the railing, his legs shaking not from fear, but from exhaustion. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, hadn't slept properly in weeks. The metal was slippery from the rain, and he had to concentrate to maintain his grip. One foot found a tiny ledge on the other side, then the other. He was facing the bridge now, his back to the void, hands clutching the railing behind him. All he had to do was let go. Just open his fingers and lean back, and it would all be over. The pain, the memories, the suffocating weight of continuing to exist in a world without Sarah. Thunder crashed overhead, and in that moment, Marcus heard something impossible. Through the storm, through the traffic noise from the bridge, through his own ragged breathing, he heard a voice. Soft, gentle, feminine, speaking his name with such tenderness it made his chest ache. Marcus. He froze, his heart hammering. The voice came again, clearer this time, and it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Marcus, my child, this is not your time. His hands tightened on the railing involuntarily. He looked around wildly, expecting to see a police officer or a good Samaritan, someone trying to talk him down. But the bridge was empty except for the occasional cars speeding past, their drivers oblivious to the man preparing to end his life just feet away. The voice spoke again, and this time he felt warmth spreading through his chest despite the freezing rain. Your Sarah wants you to live, Marcus. She's here with me, and she needs you to know something. Tears mixed with rain on his face. This had to be his mind playing tricks, some last desperate attempt at self-preservation manifesting as an auditory hallucination. But the voice continued, and now it carried something else, something that made his whole body tremble. It carried love, pure and overwhelming, the kind of love he'd only ever felt from one source his entire life. Your daughter is with us too, Marcus. Little Emma, the name Sarah chose. She's beautiful and she's safe, and she's waiting for the day she can properly meet her father. But not like this. Never like this. Marcus sobbed, his body shaking so hard he almost lost his grip. Emma. They'd only told his mother about the name they'd chosen. How could anyone know? How could this voice know? "Who are you?" he whispered into the storm, and the answer came immediately, filling him with a presence so powerful he could barely breathe. "I am the mother who has watched over you since before you were born. I am the one who held Sarah's hand as she passed into my son's arms. I am here because your story is not finished, Marcus. The pain you carry was never meant to be carried alone. But I can't," Marcus choked out. "I can't do this anymore. Every day is agony. Every breath hurts. That man took everything from me and walked away laughing. Where's the justice in that? Where's the fairness? Where were you when Sarah needed protection?" The voice remained gentle, patient, like a mother comforting a grieving child. "Justice belongs to a timeline beyond your current sight, my child. That man's freedom is an illusion that will shatter. But you, Marcus, you have work yet to do. Lives to touch. Hearts to heal. Your pain will become purpose, but only if you choose to live." "I don't know how," Marcus admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to keep going." The warmth in his chest intensified, and suddenly he could smell something impossible in the middle of the storm. Roses, fresh and perfect, the same flowers he brought Sarah on their first date. One breath at a time, one day at a time. "Tomorrow morning, go to St. Catherine's Church on Meridian Street. Father Miguel is expecting you. Though he doesn't know it yet, tell him Mary sent you. Tell him about the roses and the storm. He'll understand." The presence began to fade, but the warmth remained, and with it came something Marcus hadn't felt in months. Not quite hope, but the possibility of hope, like seeing the first star appear in a dark sky, and remembering that light still exists. His hands moved almost without his conscious decision, pulling him back over the railing. His legs gave out the moment his feet touched the bridge, and he collapsed onto the wet concrete, sobbing with relief and confusion, and 1,000 other emotions he couldn't name. A car screeched to a halt beside him. A woman jumped out, running toward him with a blanket. "Oh my God, are you okay? I saw you climbing back over. Please, let me help you." She wrapped the blanket around his shoulders, and Marcus looked up at her through his tears. She was young, maybe 25, with kind brown eyes and a small golden cross hanging from her neck. "Thank you," he managed to say, and she helped him to his feet. "Come on," she said, guiding him toward her car. "Let's get you somewhere warm. My name's Angela. I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital. We'll get you help, okay?" As she drove him to the hospital, Angela kept glancing at her with concern and something else, something like recognition. Finally, she spoke. "This is going to sound crazy, but I wasn't supposed to be on that bridge tonight. I was driving home from my shift, and suddenly I felt this overwhelming urge to take the long way, to drive across the Jefferson Bridge specifically. I never do that. It adds 20 minutes to my commute. But something, I don't know, something told me I needed to be there." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the warmth still pulsing in his chest. "Not crazy at all," he whispered. "The hospital kept him for 72 hours. Standard procedure for someone in his situation." The psychiatrist, Dr. Chun, was patient and thorough, but Marcus couldn't tell her about the voice, about Mary. He knew how it would sound. Instead, he talked about his grief, his loss, his desperate need for help, all of which were true. She started him on medication and arranged for outpatient therapy. On his third morning, as they prepared his discharge papers, Marcus asked about St. Catherine's Church. Dr. Chin smiled. "It's a beautiful old church. Father Miguel does wonderful work with people who are struggling. Would you like me to call ahead?" Marcus walked into St. Catherine's that afternoon, his legs unsteady but his resolve firm. The church was quiet, filled with golden afternoon light, streaming through stained glass windows. At the altar, an elderly priest was arranging flowers. Marcus approached slowly, his heart pounding. "Father Miguel?" The priest turned, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Yes, my son. How can I help you?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Mary sent me. She said to tell you about the roses in the storm." Father Miguel's hands stilled on the flowers. His eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Blessed Mother," he whispered, crossing himself. "I prayed for a sign. My nephew, he's been struggling, talking about ending things. I've been begging Our Lady for guidance, for help." He looked at Marcus with awe. The roses and the storm. That was the miracle my grandmother witnessed in Portugal decades ago. She smelled roses during a terrible storm, and then Our Lady appeared to her, saving her from drowning. I've never told anyone that story here. No one in America knows it. The two men sat in a pew, and Marcus told Father Miguel everything. The priest listened without judgment, occasionally wiping tears from his eyes. When Marcus finished, Father Miguel took his hands. "You've been given a gift, my son, a second chance. Our Lady doesn't appear without reason. She said you have work to do, and I believe I know what that might be." He stood, gesturing for Marcus to follow. They walked to a small room behind the sanctuary where a group of people sat in a circle. "This is our suicide survivor support group," Father Miguel explained. "We meet every week. Some have attempted, some have lost loved ones to suicide. All are struggling. They need someone who understands, someone who's been to the edge and back." Marcus spent the next months rebuilding his life piece by piece. The support group became his anchor. He found work as a carpenter with a local contractor, honest work that kept his hands busy and his mind focused. He moved into a small apartment above the church's community center, helping Father Miguel with maintenance in exchange for reduced rent. Slowly, very slowly, the crushing weight of grief began to ease, not disappearing but transforming into something bearable, something that could coexist with other emotions. 6 months after that night on the bridge, Marcus was leading his first support group meeting when a new member walked in. Marcus's blood ran cold. It was him, the drunk driver who had killed Sarah and Emma. The man looked broken, his expensive suit replaced with worn jeans and a faded shirt, his confident swagger gone. He introduced himself as Robert, his voice shaking. "I killed someone," he said, the words tumbling out. "I was drunk and I killed a pregnant woman and I got away with it. But I can't live with myself. The guilt is eating me alive. I see their faces every night. I've lost everything, my job, my family, my mind. I came here because I don't want to live anymore, but I'm too much of a coward to go through with it." The room was silent. Marcus felt rage rising in his chest, his hands clenching into fists. This was the man who had destroyed everything. But then he felt again, that warmth, that presence, gentle but insistent. Forgiveness is not for him. The voice whispered in his heart. "It's for you. This is why you're here. This is your work." Marcus stood up, his legs shaking. Everyone in the group looked at him, sensing something momentous was happening. "Robert," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him, "the woman you killed was my wife. The baby was my daughter." Robert's face went white. He started to stand, to run, but Marcus held up his hand. "Stay, please." The words felt like glass in his throat, but he continued. "I wanted to die because of what you did. I stood on a bridge 3 feet from ending it all, but something stopped me. Someone stopped me. And if I can find a way to keep living, if I can find a way to move forward, then maybe there's hope for both of us." Robert collapsed back into his chair, sobbing. The sound of his anguish filled the room, and Marcus walked over, knelt beside him, and did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He put his hand on Robert's shoulder. "I'm not saying I forgive you. I can't do that yet. Maybe never. But I'm saying you don't have to carry this alone. None of us do." That meeting changed everything. Robert began attending regularly, and while he and Marcus could never be friends, they found a strange kind of peace in their shared group. Robert dedicated his life to speaking at schools about drunk driving, turning his guilt into purpose. Marcus continued leading the support group, and over the years, he helped save dozens of lives, people who came to the edge of despair and found hope in his story, in the miracle of the roses in the storm. 3 years after that night on the bridge, Marcus met Diana at a church fundraiser. She was a widow too, having lost her husband to cancer, and she understood grief in a way that made conversation easy. They married 2 years later in St. Catherine's, with Father Miguel officiating and the entire support group in attendance. When their son was born, they named him Samuel, which means God has heard. When their daughter arrived 2 years later, Marcus knew immediately what her name would be. Emma, not a replacement for the daughter he'd lost, but promise fulfilled, a life continuing despite the pain. On the 5th anniversary of that night on the bridge, Marcus stood in the same spot, but this time in bright sunshine with Diana beside him and his children playing at his feet. He brought roses, white ones, and he dropped them into the water below. "Thank you," he whispered to the sky, to the presence he still felt in quiet moments. "Thank you for giving me the strength to see this." Diana squeezed his hand, understanding without needing explanation. She'd heard the story many times, had seen the work Marcus did with the support group, had witnessed the lives transformed. Father Miguel joined them on the bridge, now walking with cane, but still sharp and kind. "You know," he said, looking out of the water, "I've thought about that night often. Our Lady appears when hope seems lost, when human strength fails. But she doesn't fix everything magically. She gives us just enough light to take the next step, just enough strength to hold on one more day. The rest, the healing, the rebuilding, the forgiveness, that's our work. But we never do it alone." Marcus nodded, watching his daughter Emma chase a butterfly that had landed on the bridge railing. Life hadn't become easy. The grief never fully disappeared. There were still nights when he woke up crying for Sarah, still moments when the injustice of her death threatened to overwhelm him. But there was also this: laughter, love, purpose, the faces of every person in his support group who had chosen to live another day. The voice had been right. His story wasn't finished. It had only just begun, transforming from a tragedy into something else entirely, a testament to the impossible possibility of hope. That butterfly Emma was chasing suddenly landed on the roses Marcus had brought, its wings opening and closing like a prayer. For just a moment, Marcus could smell them again, those impossible roses in the storm, and he knew with absolute certainty that Sarah and his first Emma were at peace, that love transcends death, that sometimes a mother of all mothers reaches down to catch her falling children. The warmth in his chest bloomed one more time, a final confirmation, a blessing, a promise that no one ever truly walks alone. If this story touched your heart, the next video on your screen shares another incredible moment of divine intervention that saved a family from certain tragedy. Click now to witness how faith can move mountains.